You know, there is an art to listening, just the way there's obviously an art to acting. And I usually just beg people, give it an hour or two, because you won't get it from the samples. It's not like a cursory format like a music service, which is, most of them are giant sampling services. If you immerse and let yourself be taken away by either a story or something that's teaching you something new, it's weirdly addictive. We just know that from the numbers. The average customer around the world gives us 2 hours of listening every day that they start listening. And it does get really deep. We'll have debates in the communities about, there's 9 versions of some classic about which interpretation is better. Certain customers will only buy certain actors because some actors just do this full time. And they usually come from theater or movies, and they just find their voice in this particular way. So it gets really kind of deep, and it really is, it's a media type. It just wasn't really as appreciated as you're saying about the voice per se. And the way they act involves nuance and subtleties and prosody, and you know, they probably don't even think of it that way, but when they get into it, they're offering subtle interpretive performances. So in many ways, when we do audiobooks, all we're doing is positioning a book as a great script for an interpretive performance. So, and then original scripts, and there's hundreds of original scripts being written all over the world right now by comedians and playwrights and journalists and all different kinds of writers. So I can't wait to see what happens here, because the cultural explosion in India is so deep. I mean, the fact that there's, you know, people here have done theater in multiple languages, are very aware, you know, Tamil and Marathi, and you know, I think between the indie environment, the theater environment, and the Bollywood environment, now binge television's coming here, and I see, you know, occasionally talk about the end of appointment cinema, all this technology stuff. It makes for cultural mixtures that will create creativity that we've never thought of, and that's what's exciting about the platform of Audible. It's like an inspiration platform.
Yeah. Do you guys see a time when we'll have Audible stars? You know, people, like he said, people buying only one person's book.
Yeah, sure. I think why not? I don't see any other reason that it can't happen here. He was just mentioning how, you know, also it's generating so much of employment. Like 20,000 actors working for Audible in US, it's huge.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think if it can generate employment, and there's so many amazing actors we have in this country, and not everybody's getting work in feature films or series, but now there's something they can do and at least, you know, make that living.
Yeah. So Don, tell us about original programming here. Audible Originals, how are you going to be, you know, collaborating with Indian talent?
Basically exactly the same way. So it's, you know, it's whoever has the best idea. It can be from this amazing production community here. There's people in the audience who run production houses. There's producers and directors. Basically anyone who has a vision of how to bring well-composed words and then having them artfully performed. We're kind of open for whatever it is. In the States, it's amazing how comedians have stepped up to create original programming. I mean, for various reasons, comedians are now probably some of the most trenchant observers of our discourse of politics, such as it is, and I think that, but this has always really happened. I mean, most American comedians got very famous because of their television roles. They talk about stand-up as their primary art form, but the truth is, you know, Jerry Seinfeld and Robin Williams became who they were by transferring their talent to new media types like the sitcom. And so you know, I'm sure that we'll be surprising our growing audience with a lot of original programming written to the aesthetic, this very intimate kind of aesthetic. And I think it's interesting. We have a writer here who listened and figured out a way to make a book that is very particular to how he interpreted the Audible aesthetic versus the way he wrote normally.
you can increase romance using just voice?
I think when you switch from just writing to, say, an audiobook, it heightens every emotion. It's not just romance, it heightens every emotion. So when I was writing it, of course it's a new medium, it's a new format, so it was a bit challenging, but as I went in a few chapters, it sort of felt like I was having a conversation with the listener. It felt like I was confiding in my listener. It seemed like it was more like a love letter to my listeners. So that, at that point in time, it became very interesting for me. And that is the time that I got really sucked into writing it. And I just think that, you know, generally when I write the last few chapters, my job ends. But this time we recorded it and I heard it. And when I heard it, I was like, this has a new dimension to it. You know, it's like my work has come to life. It's a little different from how I wrote, and it's a different in a good way. So I think that really changed it for me. I think that was really interesting.
What can you tell us about this romance? What can you reveal?
Okay, I can't give you.
You can't tell us anything.
Yeah, of course. But the title is The Last Boy to Fall in Love. It's a dystopian fiction. Or a sci-fi romance or speculative fiction or whatever you might call it. It's different from anything else that I've ever done. For the last 10 years, I've been writing romance stories which are rooted in reality. This one has fantastical or fantasy elements to it. And that is where I think it sort of blends in with this format, because when you're trying to sell a story which is not rooted in reality, you need other dimensions to make you believe in that story, to buy into those characters and to buy into their journey. And it's been narrated by Sikandar Kher and Rasika Duggal, and they have done a brilliant job. It is much better than the way I wrote it. So I really like the way they've narrated it, and I myself, because whenever I'm writing something like this, and I've attempted this a lot of times before, whenever I'm writing like this, I don't believe the story myself. But when I heard it back, I was like, yes, now
You believed it when they read it.
Yeah, now I believe in this story. This world really exists. So, yeah.
But tell me, Duja, what would you do differently because it's an Audible original?
So the first thing, when I started writing the stories, I read a lot of Audible books. And I realized that the books that worked for me personally were the ones that were written in first person, because that is when it's a direct one-to-one conversation. Because when you go into a third-person story, it sort of becomes one-to-many. So that is the first thing that I did, that I wanted it to be an intimate conversation, because you are in someone's ear for the next 4 or 5 hours. So you have to be that much more intimate, you have to be that much more personal, and you have to not self-indulge so much. Your primary goal is to make that person not take out his earphone for the next 4 hours. So, yeah.
Is the language different?
The only difference that I sort of did not try to overextend scenes, because I needed it to be a little snappier than usual. That's the only difference that I did not dump it down just because, you know, you're hearing it.
Right.
I just made it a little more snappier.
Well, it sounds very exciting and can't wait to listen to it. Thank you, everybody. Thank you to all of you, Radhika, Rajkummar, Kalki, Dujoy. From Team Audible, big thanks to all of you for creating what you have. And a personal thanks to you. I have to share with all of you that I had, of course, heard of Audible, but I hadn't experienced it until very recently. And the one thing I really wanted in my life was more books. And it's just, I don't know why, but it just wasn't. As a working mother, it would never happen. And I've been on Audible for about 3 days now, and I'm halfway through a book. So thank you. Big personal thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we have some evening festivities planned for you. I request everyone to make their way outside and enjoy the rest of the evening. Make sure you try the nooks and explore the listening pods to get a first-hand experience of Audible. The rest of us have to stay here and do some photos. Media folks, please stay back for the same. Thank you all.